You're listening to City of Muses on Paris Underground Radio. Welcome back to City of Muses on Paris Underground Radio. I'm your host, Jennifer Garrity. I'm a screenwriter, filmmaker, and the creator and founder of the Paris Underground Radio podcast network. Each week, I sit down with an artist or creative to talk about what inspires them, what their creative process is like, and how Paris plays into it all. Chef Lisa Arielle Allen has many people's dream job. She's a pastry chef, trained by the esteemed Ferrandi école de gastronomie, a Grand Juror for the Academy of Chocolate, and a certified chocolate taster from the International Institute of Chocolate and Cacao Tasting. Lisa also founded Tarts and Truffles, a culinary consulting business in Paris, through which she offers tours, hands-on workshops, and bespoke handmade sweet treats and custom catering. So, how does one become an official chocolate taster? Let's find out. Hello, Lisa. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Hi, my pleasure. Nice to see you today.
So, can you start by telling us who you are and what you do?
Okay, that can be a very long story. I'll do my best to make it short. For the purposes of this interview, I am a pastry chef and chocolatier here in Paris. I'm originally American, but I have lived all over the world doing other things since 2005, because prior to being a pastry chef, I was actually a visual and performing arts teacher for children. So I got to travel the world as an international school teacher. So I left New York in 2005 and was living and working in Taiwan, Argentina, Switzerland, and then Venezuela. And then in Venezuela is when I, aside from the, clear troubles and difficulties of living and working there, roughly 10 years ago, I also had the great fortune of meeting some cocoa exporters and getting to go to origin and visit cocoa farms and work with the farmers directly. And as I had always been sort of a hobby baker and we can say obsessed with chocolate from the beginning, this was like a dream come true. And as I had already started toying with the idea of taking a break from teaching and retraining as a pastry chef, when I met the Tisano crew and got involved with their exporting business and getting to, like I said, just be out there in the fields, walking among the trees, teaching farmers about what chocolate tempering actually means. And, we made our own chocolate, sorting our own beans and putting it through a small machine. It was life-changing. And so I decided that that was really what I want to do. My favorite story, I think I had already decided to leave the school, and I may or may not have already enrolled at Ferrandi. But when I went on my first origin trip to Chihuahua, which has been known for a long time as the best beans in the world, the best chocolate. We're on our way to Chihuahua. I think it was a Tuesday morning. I 100% called in sick and played hooky. Nobody at my school had any idea that I was hundreds of miles away at the coast in the rainforest when I was supposed to be at work. I was like, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. I'm going to the cocoa fields. I'm not going to teach today. And we're riding in the back of this sort of, jiggity truck, standing up, because in order to get there, you have to take a boat from Ferrandi, which is a tiny little boat with a guy with a stick using it as a motor. You have to go across the bay, unload at this sort of secluded beach, and then take these junky trucks up and over into the fields. You can't really drive there, although I think maybe now you can. But at the time, the only way to get there was very shady, by these little boats and then up through the jungle. And so we're riding in the back of the truck with my friend Yuri, and somebody's passing around a little bottle of basically hooch. It's 11 o'clock in the morning. And it's all of us together. It's the farmers, it's the exporters, it's me and Yuri, it's whoever else hopped on the bus, very loose term. And, I look up and the sun is shining through the trees. And I look to Yuri, who was he worked with the exporting company as there. And I looked at him and I said, if you had told me a year ago or even a week ago that I'd be spending a Tuesday morning riding in the back of a truck through the jungles on my way to a cocoa plantation, I would have told you were nuts. And he looked at me and he said, huh. for me, it's just another day at the office. And I replied, I think it's time to change my office. And so that was it for me. That was like, okay, I've spent enough hours, days, weeks, and years of my life getting up at 6:15 and being in a classroom before 8 a.m., going through, the cycle of working in a school day in, day out. I needed something different. And so that's what really sort of said, I always said that I would, do pastry school and maybe stay in Paris for a year or two and see how it went. And if I ever felt like it, I could always go recruit and get back in the classroom and start teaching again. But I think from that moment, I kind of knew that would never happen. I knew that I was stepping away from classroom teaching and probably would never go back.
That's amazing. You've never told me that story.
Oh, well, yeah, that's how I got here. And so I did that. So I moved to Paris. I was enrolled in Ferrandi, the very esteemed pastry and culinary institution that is considered the top of the pops by the French government. So there's some support from the French government. So if usually if you look in the back of any Michelin-starred kitchen in Paris, you see the interns, the stagiaires with the Ferrandi coats in the back. And so that's where I got to go to school, which was fantastic. Did my stage in a Michelin-starred kitchen at the Prince de Galles Hotel under Nicolas Paciello and Stephanie Leclerc, which was pretty amazing, but also very difficult and not recommended over 40. So, but it was a wonderful experience in a lot of ways and wisened me up very quickly to the ways of the haute cuisine French kitchen. But also, I understood that restaurants at this stage of my life was probably not the way I was going to go. But even still, I left the Prince de Galles when it was time. And in the fall, I did get a job as a pastry chef at Le Grand Juror in the Palais de Tokyo. And so I worked there for a while. And that really solidified my feeling that restaurant life was not for me. It was like having perpetual jet lag because I was 4 nights a week on the floor from 6 p.m. to 2 or 3 a.m. And by the time I had my dinner, got home, got showered, got calmed down enough to sleep, it was 3 or 4 a.m. But then I had French class at 9 o'clock in the morning. It was too much. So while I was at Le Grand Juror, I also started working with a small event company, so to speak. I'm trying to figure out how to explain them. And she was running mostly team building events, but also some like family events for tourists. It was the crash bang boom, entree plat dessert. You've got 20 team members, 2 or 3 chefs, everybody runs around to different stations. And in 2.5 hours, they all work together to prepare a full meal. So we sit down, we plate it, they eat it, then they leave and we clean up. And it was fun, but it was very frustrating for me as a chef because the recipes had to be so dumbed down and so poorly prepared to do it in that format that I was like, this isn't what I want to be teaching people. Like if I get to use my teaching expertise to share French pastry, I want it to be in a way that people can actually learn and that they learn to do it the right way. I'm still a teacher. I'm still a nerd in the sense that like, I want people to actually learn. I get it that people are coming for a fun experience, but they should also learn something and be able to go home and do it again.
If you're going to do it right.
Exactly. But at the same time, it opened up my eyes to the fact that there are a lot of possibilities for combining my pastry training and my teaching skills and background to run a real business. Because, selling cakes, you really don't make much money. I still do it, but it's more for the fun and because I like to feed people, not because I'm going to earn a living out of it. And working in a restaurant, similar. You work your tail off. You've got long shifts, hard hours. It's very hard on your body. It's more than minimum wage. But when you're starting as a pastry chef in your 40s, you're still getting paid the same that a 23-year-old who just completed the same training is going to get paid. And that's not really a living wage when you're supporting a family. So all of this was coming together I would say in the fall to Christmas time of 2017. And I stumbled into Edwards, ended up getting to meet everybody on the team very quickly, and told them I was interested in learning more about chocolate and taking classes with them because I saw that they had a workshop. And by the time I made it through everybody on the team, they were like, there's nothing you'll learn in those classes that you don't already know. You're a trained pastry chef, but you say you have a teaching background. Maybe it makes sense for you to teach for us. And so by June of 2018, I ended up being the full-time manager of the workshop, teaching all the classes, managing the business, creating recipes, developing partnerships, and also, bringing in some of my connections from the tourism stuff that I had started to work with to really bring a lot of clients into the chocolate workshop. That's where I really started developing my understanding of how to function as a business person and a culinary professional, not as a teacher. But so when I learned that and started to make those adjustments, I became very successful, which was really cool. And the workshop I had gone up, I think in my first year, the chiffre d'affaires had increased by over 500%.
Wow.
And I was killing it. I was really killing it. And it was exhilarating, and I was answering reservation emails at 10 o'clock at night. I was on the metro doing emails. I was, doing 4 classes back to back, never taking lunch breaks, and it was great. And then COVID hit. I didn't totally panic, but I kind of panicked because there was that period, which we all remember, between the beginning of the lockdowns and the enormous uncertainty of life, the universe, and everything, before the French government figured out how to put in place the support system, which was fantastic, of helping small business owners, stay afloat and not starve and be able to pay our rent during the pandemic. I didn't know what to do. And it was, I was working as an independent contractor for Edouard. I wasn't an employee. So when there were no clients, I didn't get paid. I was like, okay, so I guess I have to fend for myself now. So I had been working with at least 5 or 10 different travel agencies, offering various classes and experiences with Edouard as the base, but under my own umbrella as Tarts and Truffles already. But the clients never knew that, of course. They just knew that they were taking a class at Edouard through whatever agency. And I didn't have my own website. And so when they basically turned their back on me during COVID, I said, okay, I guess I need to be able to fend for myself a bit more. Business hat. And so I hired a web designer and I started building a website on my own. That's when Tarts and Truffles was really born properly, I would say. And so I started developing other partnerships as Tarts and Truffles. I started collaborating with other tour companies and professionals here in Paris, running my own walking tours. I have been doing the French pastry classes out of my apartment since fall 2017. I did my first ones when I was still living in the 5th down by Rue Mouffetard, and we would go to the fruit and veg guy and pick up our strawberries and come back to my tiny apartment and make tarts. And then when we chose this apartment, I chose it because of this beautiful double salon, and I can host, I wouldn't say that much bigger pastry classes, but it's a very pleasant space to host classes. So COVID started slowly relaxing, and I was quietly building my business and my contacts separate from Edouard. And again, it was doing, once the sort of revenge tourism started picking up, the business was just out of control. And I was, in 2022, I think I cleared 100,000 euro chiffre d'affaires.
Wow.
I mean, not for my company, for Edouard. I took a generous portion of that, but it's important to remember that I was doing it all by myself, running every step of the business. And I did find 1 or 2 people here and there who could cover classes for me when I had too many, or when it was a weekend I was away. I did have a few subs, but 90% of all of those classes was still me teaching them.
Are you a book lover who's always looking for the next best book? Or an avid reader who'd love the chance to ask their favorite author a question? Well, then you might like my other podcast, Storytime in Paris, where I interview writers with a French connection, with questions that come from you, the author's fans and followers. Then, the authors treat us to a reading from their books. Listen now to Storytime in Paris on parisundergroundradio.com or wherever you listen to podcasts. We'll be right back with City of Muses after a word from our sponsors. And now, back to City of Muses on Paris Underground Radio.
So that was great. So we were coming back from COVID. I was working my butt off, and then I got pregnant. When you're pregnant and working full time as a kitchen professional and on your feet in your 40s, it is not sustainable at a certain point. And I started having to really slow down. And we were going in and out of confinements still during my pregnancy, which was a godsend. I was very happy to spend a lot of my pregnancy in confinement because all I wanted to do was sit in my pajamas on the couch. And guess what? That's what everybody else was doing too. So no FOMO. So then, I started thinking I needed to to scale back. I should be a little bit more part-time when I go back, et cetera. But of course, business just kept picking up, and I went back to work right away very early when Brooklyn was only about 10 weeks old, because I felt that I needed to, but also I felt that, if I wasn't present at the rentrée in September, I wasn't going to be ready for Christmas. And Christmas is a huge season for the workshop and for team building events. And that was, I would easily double my chiffre d'affaires in December over any other month, sometimes more, triple. And so I needed to be sure that we were ready and getting those reservations locked in for the holidays. So I did that, and I did that for a while. And again, business was doing great. My tours were going great. My classes were going great, inside Edward, outside Edward. And then as my wonderful, amazing daughter got older, and the sort of, I like to call the war of attrition of the months and years of sleep deprivation started to really take their toll, and my health was suffering, and I realized I really can't work this much anymore. I decided to leave Edward and back away from the workshop. And so I made that decision almost a year ago. And I told them I would, can work through my summer season, help them train someone to replace me. But by the fall, I wanted to be out. Like, I would still come and help with team buildings and co-host, because I still wanted to have the right to rent back the space for my own clients, which I still do. But I was like, I need to do other things. I want to think about opening up my own brick and mortar space. I want to develop other aspects of my business and have more time to spend with Brooklyn and ride the carousels and go to the museum, spend Saturdays at the climbing gym with her and not in a basement making chocolate with people. And then, it didn't really go as planned. They didn't really find anyone to replace me. I had to sort of string along through the fall. Then I got COVID in October. It became a long COVID, and I was sick with other things. And I would say from the beginning of October of last year through February, it was just a blur, nothing. It was just kind of treading water. And then I decided to sort of up my game in the chocolate world and do a proper level 1 and 2 certification in chocolate tasting with the International Institute of Chocolate and Cacao Tasting. I really wish they could come up with a shorter name, but they need all the words in there.
Those are impressive words. I don't think those are bad words.
They're impressive words, right?
They're good words. Yeah.
I like to just say the Institute. Forgot to mention along the line there that, I got connected with the Academy of Chocolate, which is also based in London. And I started judging for them in 2019. So I go to London once a year to judge. Usually I judge filled bonbons and flavored bars.
What a difficult life.
Yeah. I have to go to London for a week every October and go taste chocolate for, hours on end. And so being a judge with the Academy of Chocolate really made me feel like it was just a cool way to participate in the community. I'm even a Grand Juror now.
What does that mean? I was going to ask you about that. What does it mean to be a Grand Juror?
A Grand Juror means that I had to do an extra couple of days of training. But in the end, what it means is that, each category, and there are several categories that get judged every year, but obviously I can't keep going back and forth to London. So I kind of got sucked into filled bonbons. So that's my specialty with them. Also, it's what I was making a lot of when I was teaching and working at Edward. So you'll have about a week of judging. So they get a lot of samples. I honestly don't even know. That's probably in the thousands of different chocolatiers and chocolate companies and chocolate makers all over the world that will submit samples to be judged. And so we got a week, and there's a morning session and an afternoon session. And each submission, I think, gets judged by at least, I think each one goes to 2 tables. So at least 8 different jurors will judge it, rank it. There's we have like a platform through Judgify where, it's evaluated for all different aspects of its success, from flavor balance to texture, to the chocolate itself, to the balance, to are the shells molded properly? Are there air bubbles? Are there imperfections? A lot of different things get judged and calculated during the week of judging. And then all of those scores get, calculated and the top 12 in each category, it gets narrowed down. The top, however many, looks like they would get a gold level award. Then they'd get passed to the grand jury. And so then on the Saturday at the end of that week, the grand jury comes in and we reevaluate the top winners and make sure that they deserve their gold level status. And 2, And I know this is going to sound even more incredible, very Willy Wonka. We decide who is going to receive the Golden Bonbon Award. And then there's also for the bars, it's the Golden Bean. And so there can be only one. There's no ties. So then there's a whole there's the bylaws and there's a whole series of rules as to how and who and if somebody can actually get named the Golden Bonbon for the year, like the best chocolate that has been submitted. And if they get that award, then also what they earn, of course, is all of the publicity, the social media exposure, they get a lot of attention. And of course, it translates to a lot of sales. And so that's the hook of wanting to win that Golden Bonbon or Golden Bean Award. Sadly, this past year, nobody got the Golden Bonbon because
oh no,
there was one juror, and it has to be unanimous at a certain point. I really don't know what happened with her. I honestly think she got a defective plate, or maybe she was getting sick, or she had like a piece of something in her teeth. I don't know what it was, but the top two that everybody else was like, oh my God, these are incredible. One of these two should win. She said, no, it's defective. It's not well done. And she cited defects and said, I won't sign off on it. And so nobody got the Golden Bonbon last year.
Wow. Drama.
That also made me feel that, I wanted to continue my journey as a chocolate taster. And so I signed up with the International Institute of Chocolate and Cacao Tasting to do the level 1 and level 2 certification. And so this February, I also got to attend courtesy of the Institute, attended the Cacao Festival in Amsterdam, which is it's an annual trade fair looking at the cocoa industry, not necessarily about like selling bars, but more about chocolate makers, meaning people who are working with cocoa beans and turning it into chocolate. The bean to bar movement, so to speak, small and large scale, sustainability, traceability. I mean, even Airbus was there talking about their new program for satellite observation of cocoa fields, so that people can, say with certainty and without a doubt, like, yes, we can tell you that this cocoa is being farmed without child labor, for example, because we're watching. It's a little crazy, but also looking at deforestation, because the satellite imaging helps them track the state of the forests from the air, and they can see, how people are taking care of the fields, or, very interesting.
Yeah, it's cool.
So there's a lot going on in the cocoa world about this concept of sustainability and trying to trickle it down to the whole market, down to the consumer of, what my friend Samir was saying, we want to get people excited about paying more for chocolate. I know that sounds strange, but you have to understand that so much of the chocolate industry, it only exists in the West because of slave labor and colonization in Africa. And it is a very, difficult, labor-intensive process to actually get to a point where you have a chocolate bar in your hands. And people are so used to not really paying for that. They don't want to understand that the reason why they can have a Nestle Dessert chocolate bar for €2 at Monoprix is because there's some poor African kid who's being paid a penny a day to harvest the beans. And so the goal of the industry now is to, just like what happened in coffee, to get people more and more aware of, okay, but if you want to make sure that farmers and children are not being exploited, and if you want to be sure that people are being taken care of, and that, good agricultural processes and procedures and practices are being supported by the government instead of just being given pesticides to kill the bugs, and you want to have chemical-free agricultural products, you have to pay for that. And in order to have the farmers not being taken advantage of and have a roof over their head and have education provided for their kids, you have to pay for that at the final end, because that's where it starts, right? So there's a big movement right now towards, bringing awareness actually of fine flavor cacao and of how to bring really good quality chocolate. And and it's win-win, right? We bring really good quality chocolate to the market and get people aware of what chocolate can and should taste like. And at the same time, we're valuing and honoring the people who make that happen. And so that is a big part of what the Institute is actually about. Yes, they want to, get people who work within the industry to understand fine flavor cacao, and it's the love of chocolate tasting at a high level and all the brain science behind how you register taste and smell and aroma, and how you go from your eyes, your nose, and your mouth to your brain to deciding what does and doesn't taste good and how it tastes. It's all quite complicated and it's fascinating. Behind all that is the concept of, if we can educate people more about chocolate itself and understand what they can be eating and how that happens, then we can actually make it a more sustainable industry for everybody involved. So bringing it full circle, that is part of why Tarts and Truffles is shifting away from like the chocolate workshops that I was doing at Edward and more towards trying to, chocolate education, like bringing good chocolate to the people, and hosting more chocolate tasting events here in Paris, whether it's like the really cool chocolate and wine and champagne pairing and tasting class I'm doing with Cynthia next month. I'm hoping to do just a straight up chocolate tasting masterclass here in Paris, but I'm trying to find the right venue. I think that covers a lot.
Yeah, I think so too. Oh, here's one last question. How do you feel that Paris has helped or hindered you as a creative?
As a creative, that's an interesting question. I don't really feel like I've had a lot of sort of support, so to speak, being creative in Paris. And it's not by any malicious intent by anybody. There are a lot of networks, which are great, where there's a lot of people that we can connect with to support each other in our endeavors individually. But I haven't really felt like I had the time or space to just be creative. For example, there's a lot of cakes and recipes I'd like to try. There's a lot of things I'd like to make, but I would need to be able to sell them, right? And I feel like because in terms of like cakes and things, right? The niche that I'm useful to the community, the niche I'm useful for is for American or hybrid American French style wedding cakes, birthday cakes, stuff like that. Not really creative French pastry. Because if people want creative French pastry, they go to one of the hundreds of amazing French pastry shops that are just down the street. Nobody's going to, even just a tarte citron basilic, no one's going to order that from me. Why bother made to order one from an American who's doing French style pastry when they can just go to Cedric Rollet or, Jeffrey Kang or whoever and buy one there. So in that sense, I'm getting requests and orders for the same things over and over, or like the same cake on the inside, but on the outside. Yes, I'm learning to be creative on how to make a cake that looks like a Pikachu, or how to make, what did I make? A birthday cake at a Poisson d'Avril. I made a big fish. I do a lot of frozen birthday cakes with Elsa on it. Not exactly what I wanted to do with my French pastry degree. It's still fun. It's still creative, but it's definitely not the way I would have wanted to be creative. And also, I will say, like, trying to be creative, so to speak, with these chocolate education courses, it's a similar issue as we have with the cakes, is that people don't want to spend the money on it. And that's the hard part, because on the one hand, people who are in their CDI jobs, making their 4,000 or 5,000 euros a month, steady income, they don't understand that for us as individual entrepreneurs, we have to be able to charge a certain amount to run an event. Once we pay, like the chocolate and wine event, it's, what was it last time? $70 for the wine, $55 for the chocolate, $100 to rent the space, all of the extra chocolates and things, the 3,000 euros I spent on my training and my education, just in the chocolate certification, the marketing time, the admin, the putting on the website, the managing the clients back and forth. And then the 3 hours being there teaching for both me and the sommelier. Even with people paying 90 euros per person coming in, it's a small group experience. It's only 8 people. And the TVA. And once all those things are paid, we're walking out barely making $10, $15 an hour for each of us. Barely.
Have you always dreamed of owning a place in Paris? If you're planning on moving, renting, buying, or selling a place in France, you'll need the expert guidance of Gaëlle Boisclair and Marie Pistinier, hosts of the Paris Estate of Mind podcast. Listen now to Paris Estate of Mind on parisundergroundradio.com or wherever you listen to podcasts. We'll be right back with City of Muses after a word from our sponsors. And now, back to City of Muses on Paris Underground Radio.
I do find it difficult in Paris that people who live a certain way and they have their sort of security of steady jobs and steady income and their cost of, what they consider to be a reasonable amount to pay for an experience or a workshop. It's hard for them to understand actually what goes into all of us offering these things for them to come and enjoy, that actually we need to get paid for our time as well. And there's all the time and effort that we put into promoting it and organizing it and developing these things that doesn't get paid, that once we actually have those events, if we only get paid $100 for the whole thing, it's not worth it. And so I guess it's a bit parallel to the whole thing with the chocolate thing, is that in order to feel more supported as a creative in Paris, I would need to feel like people were more willing to spend a little bit more to partake in these experiences, because obviously I understand that for somebody who is like me, maybe somebody who's only bringing in $2,000 a month net, they're not going to spend $100 on an event. Somebody who's visiting from New York and makes, the billions they make over there, when people are coming to Paris as a once in a lifetime experience, they're going to spend more on special experiences. But it's tough because I don't know about you, but I live here now. I've been here almost 8 years, and I want to feel like I spend my life and my energy being part of the community here and not focusing all my efforts and attention externally towards people who are only going to visit for a week and then leave. I want to be creating events for our community, actually, not just expats, but French people as well. And so it's really difficult to create new things for people within what the market seems to, like what it seems the market will actually tolerate. What people are willing to spend doesn't necessarily match up with what we need to be able to charge in order to make it worthwhile. So that's the tough part.
So speaking of all these workshops and everything, where can people find you if they want to keep up to date with what you're doing?
Glad you asked. No. I've just finally relaunched the newsletter out of my website, which is funny. When I looked in the archives, I was like, oh, the last one I sent was around Christmas 2020. So I'm relaunching the newsletter to try and get the word out more. And if people want to find out what's happening with Tarts and Truffles, if you go to my website, up at the top, there's a menu bar at the top, and there's one that says what's new. And so you can click on what's new, and it'll tell you what's going on. And there's a place to enter your email address to sign up for the newsletter. I don't plan on sending it out more than once or twice a month. You're not going to get a weekly spam. It's just to, get a chunk of events out there and keep people up to date. So no spam, I promise. You can also just visit my website anytime. At the moment, the way to find the events and classes and sign up is on the Order Now page, because pretty much everything else that I offer, from the walking tours, the pastry classes, the chocolate tours, those you find through the workshops and experience pages, and they all require, there's a little green button and you say, I'm interested, sign me up or whatever. And it sends me an email with your information, and we have an exchange to figure out the date and time that works best for you. And then I send an invoice, et cetera, et cetera. And that's how people can book. But these events that are already on the calendar, you don't need to exchange with me. You can just sign up directly. And so that's why it's on the Order Now page, because the general pages are more about starting a conversation and getting you on the calendar. It is one way that I am still very old-fashioned and somewhat unique in this tourism world. Instant booking of tours and workshops with me is not really possible. I want to make sure that we come up with, it's what people like to call bespoke, right? Classes with me are always bespoke, which means we have a conversation before I book you. We make sure that the date, the time, the duration, the recipes, it's exactly what suits what each person wants or is interested in or needs. And of course, making sure that I'm available. And then we book it. It can be fairly fast. It's a couple of emails back and forth.
Well, fabulous. I will include links to everything so that people can find you really easily.
Yay.
Thank you, Lisa. This was so great. I feel like I could just keep talking to you forever. Thank you so much. Thank you for listening to City of Muses. If you've liked what you heard, please take a moment to rate and review it. This is the fastest and easiest way to help support the podcast. Tell a friend who could use a little inspiration. You can also subscribe to the Paris Underground Radio newsletter over on our website, parisundergroundradio.com, which comes out every Sunday and gives a little peek into what's on the network for the week ahead. I'm your host, Jennifer Garrity. You can find me on all socials at Jennyphoria. That's JennyPhoria. Thank you for listening, and may you find inspiration wherever you go. City of Muses was produced by Jennifer Garrity for Paris Underground Radio.